In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create this composition that you see on your screen. The models that we used to make this composition came from a model project available on designandmake.com. After we get done looking how this was created, we'll go ahead and show you how to add some customizable text on the design as well, so you can really make it your own. And as I mentioned, the models were sourced from Design and Make, and you are encouraged to explore Design and Make so you can see some of the amazing projects and the clip art that are available to you on the Design and Make store. So I highly encourage that you go check this out. But for now, we're actually going to go to the software and we're going to look at setting up our file so we can have a look at how we can create the composition from earlier. Okay, so let's go to create a new file, and this is going to be a single-sided job, which is 24 inches width, height of 12 inches, thickness of 1 inch, units in inches, Z0 off the material surface, XY dating positions in the middle. Now that's for design purposes, but when it comes down to toolpathing, I want to switch it to bottom left. But you can do this as well if you want to, but I'm just going to use this in the middle for design purposes. Modeling resolution very high because we're using models here. Material settings to Canadian Maple. Let's click OK and let's get looking at our job. Now, a couple of things to point out here. If you've gone ahead and purchased this project from Design and Make store, then it would have been delivered to you as an installer file. And when you double click that installer file, it will place the clip art where it belongs in your default vector clip art library. And then it would automatically show up in your clip art tab. And we'll have a look at that in just a moment. But also, one thing to note is because you've received this project as a tutorial, so you've received the DNM files in this tutorial, they won't be reflected in your Design and Make account. So do keep that in mind. If you purchase them, they'll be reflected in your account, but because they're in this tutorial and you've received the file in this tutorial, they won't be under your Design and Make account. So let's pop over to our clip art tab and let's pop over to the 3D view. So you can see my clip art library here. Some of this is purchased and some of this is available through your V&Co account that comes with your purchase of the software. But down here we have Design and Make, and now in Design and Make it will show all of the Design and Make files that I have purchased and installed. In this case, these are the tutorial files, and you can find these under the Design and Make folder, which is in your public documents area of your PC. But we can have a look at adding a folder in and we can show you where that is located. So if we click on add a new folder, so you can see we've got our file explorer here. We're going to go to this PC, we're going to expand the C drive here, then we're going to go down to users, we're going to go down to public, we're going to go to public documents, Vectric files, and then we're going to click on to tutorial files. Now, normally your Design and Make files are actually found in this Design and Make folder, and this is where they're actually installed to. So this is where the software references your Design and Make files from. But we'll go down to tutorial files, we're going to go down to the latest version of the software, Design and Make project, Winebar number 1, click OK, and that brings in my Winebar number 1 project folder with all of the clip art that we need for the project, including our project page. Let's have a look at that project page. If I double click it and bring it to the job here, you can see it gives us a rough layout of how we want to design our job. You can see the actual finished part here in the bottom left. This is quite handy to have as a reference guide because I may be using this later on in order to help me build up this design. Just as a note, you can right mouse click it and you can choose open containing folder. And if I click that now, it opens up the actual location of where that file is located. And you can now double click that and this will open up in your PC's native software for opening up images. And you can actually print it from here if you want to. So if you want to have a copy on hand while you're working, you can have this. But I don't need this for now. I'm going to click out of this, close down this folder, and we'll have a closer look at our project. So you can see here I've got some information about the clip art. You've got the silhouettes of the clip art. You've got combinations in which you can use the clip art to make some really cool designs, and we're going to use this one in the bottom left here. So I can use this as a reference sheet, and what I'm going to do is just zoom out a little bit, and while I've got the transform mode on this sheet, I can bring it up and pop it at the top here so I can use it as a reference guide later. You'll also notice that I've got a layer for it, which is a bitmap layer, so I can turn it off and on, and you can see when it's not selected it's kind of a little bit faded. When I click on it to select it again, you can see it much more clearly. But for now we're going to zoom back into our worksheet with our mouse scroll wheel, and we're just going to double left mouse click on the barrel top to have a look at the first part of our project, because that is the background there you can see of this vintages sign. So zoom back in on that. Now with a project like this, I tend to work pretty organically. I tend to place things visually and then I mess around with them later in terms of their thickness and where I want them to be in the actual material. But I like to work pretty organically, and you'll see why in the 3D view you can do this and how you can use it to your advantage here. For example, we can grab on the transform handles here and I can hold shift and I can move the barrel and size it as I want to in X and Y. You can see X and Y are linked there, so they're actually changing respectively when I move it. I can also go to the design tab if I wanted to, and I could change the selected object size here, or I could just do it in 3D view. Because if I click on this transform handle here, I can adjust the width. If
I click on this one here, I can adjust the height. And if I click on the corner one, I can adjust both. Let's do that, shall we? So we're going to change it to 10 inches and we'll hit enter. And you'll notice it applies it in both the directions, so in X and Y. And let's bring that back into the middle. So snap that back into the middle there. So now we've got our 10 by 10 barrel here, or 10 by 10.0141, because the X and Y are linked here, which means when I change this from 10, the Y value changed appropriately to size that up so that this could be reflecting the width. Now the next thing we're going to do is bring our wine bottle. So let's double left mouse click on that, and that should bring it into the middle of our barrel. Now a couple of things to note here. You notice the wine barrel is in red. That means it's the selected component. It also has this green kind of shadow around it, and that means it's merging in with the barrel component because they're sharing the same space. And if I go over to the components tab, you can see I've got my wine bottle listed and my barrel listed here as well, and I can turn them off and on and off and on. Now if we look back at our sheet here, we can see the wine bottle sits kind of further up and on top of the barrel here. So let's have a look at moving that in, shall we? So you can see how already that worksheet's coming useful. So let's click on this. Let's click on it again to have the transform handles appear. We're going to hold Alt. I'm going to grab this middle one and we're going to drag it up to the position that we want it to be, which is roughly around there, I think. I'm going to let that go. And you can see now that's roughly in the right position. And we can size that up a little bit because you can see the barrel, you can see the wine bottle even takes up quite a bit of that barrel top there. So let's size that up. We can hold Shift, grab one of these corner handles here, and we can just transform that to make it a little bit bigger. So about that size, I think is quite right. Let's just move that down again, holding Alt. And perhaps on second thought, that's a little bit too big, so let me size that down just a wee bit. Again, holding Shift. So maybe around there actually. And then again, hold Alt, bring that back up, pop that around there. And this is quite organic. I can always change this later if I want to, but right now I think I'm happy with how that's placed. Then you can currently see that the top of the wine bottle is underneath the barrel there. So let's have a look at changing that. So how do we address that? Well, there's a couple of ways we could do it. We could click on our component and we can right mouse click here and go into the properties, and we can change it in this menu. We can also access the properties over here by clicking this button down here when clicking on the component, and this brings up a field where you can change the properties here. But what I'm going to do instead is use these options here. Now this relates to the total height of the actual component, but I want to use the shape height, which is this option here. You can see the little triangle that represents the shape height, and you can see the base height one over here. So I can manipulate these as I need them. I can also right mouse click and I can drag my view, and I can turn on this option here to draw my material block, so I can see just how thick I'm working with if I'm working with, you know, material where I need to watch out for my thickness in terms of how thick my model goes and if it goes through the material block. So what I'm going to do is just eyeball this. I'm just going to click on this one here. I'm going to drag the shape height up just a little bit to about 0.4 there. So I'm going to let that go. Then I'm going to click on the base height and give it just a little bit of base height. So I can click that and drag that up just a little bit, maybe about 0.2-ish, something like that. So around just a little bit further, maybe around there. I'll let that go, and we can see now it's raised it above that part of the barrel, and I think that looks pretty good. Now just to explain the difference in the base height and the shape height. So the shape height would actually bring up the shape itself, so it just the shape height. In fact, if I click on this and take this value, I'll show you a quite obvious example of shape height, and I'll show you what the difference is. So if I put this to something like 2, hit enter, you can see it's adjusted the shape height and it's manipulated it, so it's really exaggerated that shape. Okay, whereas the base height, I'm just going to change this value back to what it was earlier, 0.49, so you can actually use this field to enter in a value manually if you want to. Whereas the base height, it's, imagine if you had a trophy and the trophy standing on a base. If you increase that base that the trophy is standing on, it will get higher, and that is effectively your base height. So if I increase the base height, you'll notice the shape doesn't actually really change, but the base underneath it will. So if I increase that quite egregiously, you'll see how much the base is affected there. So just some things to keep in mind when you're manipulating some of your components. But I'm happy with how that looks currently, so let's zoom back onto the top there. Now notice in the top left here I've got another wine bottle. That's because I was holding control earlier when adjusting the model. So I'm just going to delete that because I don't need that. I don't need a copy of it, but I've got my original there as well. Let's go back to our clip art tab and we're going to double left mouse click our wine glass to bring that in to our components, because we've got the wine glass here. So we're going to look at now placing that and rotating that into place. So let's zoom in and let's grab that by the handle in the middle here. Let's drag that across to roughly where we want to put it. Now keep in mind here, this is a wine glass, so we want to make sure that, you know, it's sized appropriately to a wine bottle, because we don't make it look silly by having a overly large glass. So I'm just going to rotate that a little bit like so. I think that's pretty good using that rotation handle. And again, using the transform handles here, I can hold shift. Let's drag that down just a wee bit in terms of size. And that isn't too shabby actually. I think that looks pretty good. I can just grab that again and I can just drag that up just a little bit, and I think that looks pretty good there. Now you'll notice we've got the same problem that we had before, which was that some of the wine glass here has merged with the top of the barrel. So what can we do? Well, again, we can just bring that shape height or base height up. I'm going to go for the base height in this case. So I'm going to click on that and I'm just going to drag using my left mouse click and just move my mouse, and that is looking pretty good. I can show you another way you can do this actually as well. If you wanted to enter a value here and you wanted to know specifically what that value was, and we can actually do this in the 2D view as well as the 3D view. If I tile my views here, if you hover your mouse over that point of the barrel, you can see in the bottom kind of right here, you'll see that I get a Z value when I click onto that component. It's about 0.1502. So if you wanted to, if we just go back to our 3D view and maximize it, you could use that value here and you could literally just click on the wine glass and we could go into transform mode and you can put that value in here if you wanted to, so that 0.1502 if you wanted to get the whole thing out of there. So I can show you what that looks like. So we put in 0.1502, hit enter, gives it that extra bit of base height. You can have a look at what that looks like. So that's just another way in which you could manipulate your model here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create a mirror copy of that wine glass, because you can see we've got two here. So let's go to the design tab with our wine glass selected. Let's go to this tool here, which is mirror selected objects. We're going to choose the option to flip about job center. We want to create a mirrored copy and we want to flip this horizontal, and we'll just click on that. And there we go. We've got our mirrored copy of our wine glass. And you can see how quickly we're going to let this take shape. So now let's bring in our engraving plaque. So let's double left mouse click on that. Let's bring it in. Let's zoom in on that. Now this time what I'm going to do is I could just hold shift and size it up manually if I wanted to, but I'm actually going to use some values here, and I want to have specific width and a specific height. Now if you recall earlier, if I click on one of the corner transform handles, I can affect both at the same time, but one of these individually. So I'm going to click on the right one here so I can affect just the width. Let's go for 18, press enter, and then what we're going to do is click on the top one, sorry, the bottom one here, and we're just going to go over to the right here and we're going to change this one to 5, hit enter, and then what we'll do is we'll drag that into the center of our job here. So we'll just snap that into place, and then I'm just going to hold Alt and I'm going to drag this transform handle here and I'm going to drag this down to where I want it to be, which is around about there. I want it to kind of cover up the bottom half of the barrel there. So let's let go of that. And I think that looks pretty good for the moment. And then what we're going to do is we're going to actually bring this up a little bit. So again, let's use the right mouse click and we can hold control to move this around. I'm just going to tilt this just a little bit so I'm going to look at it in this view. And I'm going to increase the base height. So let's left mouse click on that and let's, while holding down left mouse click, drag that up. And what we're trying to aim for is making sure that the barrel isn't seen through here. So you can see here it's interacting here and also at the bottom. So that lets me know I need to move this down just a little bit. So let's hold Alt and move that down a little bit. Perfect. And now we need to move it up a little bit in the base height again. So let's left mouse click, drag that up just a wee bit until that interacts. I think that is actually pretty good. That looks pretty nice, I think, at that point there. Well, actually, you know what? Let's go for a little bit more. Let's go for just a wee bit more so we can really hide that part of the barrel. So let's go around there. I think that, yeah, I think that looks pretty good.
Okay, so right now you can see that the wine bottle is kind of merging into our plaque here. So how can we address that? Let's select our wine bottle. We're going to look at a new function here. So we're going to right mouse click and we can go to component, we can choose properties, or we can just click on it again, choose the component properties here with this button here, and we're going to use the tilt function. So we're actually going to tilt this. I'm just going to rotate this around just a little bit so you can see this in action. And what I'll do is I'll click on tilt. I'm going to set the anchor points. I'm going to set one up here so you can see the number 1 next to it, indicating that's the first anchor point where we're going to access from, and the second point where we're going to have the high point. And then what we're going to do is we can use this slider here to manually adjust the degrees in which we tilt. We can also just set a value here, but you can see how that's tilting it so that I'm still getting the top of it popping through here, but also the bottom end of the wine barrel, so it doesn't look funny from any angle there. And I think right there looks pretty good, so I'm just going to close that out, and then we're going to do the same thing for our wine glasses. So again, what we'll do is select our wine glass. We're going to go to the properties here, and this time we'll tilt it, so we're going to go for our set angle. So we're going to go for first one up here, second one down here for our high point, and we'll start adjusting that. So let's just drag that slider and we can start adjusting that until it pops through. Now, key thing to note here, let's look at this from the side view, because we want to have a look at if the bottom of the glass here is coming out prouder than the wine bottle, which it isn't currently. So that's pretty good. I can go a little bit further with that, just a little bit. There we go. And that's pretty good. Okay, but one thing I will do is I'm going to just move my wine glass over a little bit because it's currently interacting with my wine bottle. So let's rotate that just a little bit. There we go, looks good. Let's delete the old one out. Let's go to the mirror selected objects tool again, design tab, with our wine glass selected, and then we'll click on flip horizontal, and then as easy as that, you've got 2 wine glasses that are tilted in the right place, ready to go. Okay, so let's just go back to the top here. We're going to look at the next section now, which is the grapes. So let's go to the clip art, let's double left mouse click, and let's bring in our grapes. So you can see right now that the grapes are merged in with the model there. So let's just move these over to where we want them, which is over this side. And I'm just going to play around with this to get it into the right position. So again, I can size this down by holding shift, and I can left mouse click and size that up and down as I need to. And I can rotate this. So I can rotate this using the rotation handle up here. And what I'll do is I'll just place it around here, I think. Just make it slightly bigger. Hold shift. Yeah, it's not too bad. And then what I'm going to do is actually hold control, and I'm just going to left mouse click and drag out a copy of this one, and then I want to flip this. So how do I do that? Well, I can, while having it selected, type in H on the keyboard, and that will flip it horizontally. Now I can move around with this one, and actually, you know what, these need sizing down just a little bit upon further reflection. So I'm just going to size these down to more of an appropriate size, drag it out a little bit, move it to where I need it to go. That looks a bit better. Yeah, that looks much better. And let's bring that down here. Again, I'll rotate this just a little bit as well. So I can click on the rotation angle here, and I can rotate that. I can size that down a little bit if I want to, holding shift. Drag it over. I'm actually pretty happy with that as is. That looks pretty good to me right now, but I'm going to sort out this problem here with the stems. So we're going to go for the tilt this time again. So we'll click on the properties here, and we'll go for tilt. Now this time I'm going to set the anchor from down here first to up here for the axis. So let's put in a value. So if I put in 1 degree, for example, hit space. Okay, that did the trick. That looks pretty good. Happy with that. So let's close that out, and now I can put in my leaf. So I know I've got the leaf left, so I can now put that in, and along with our text. So let's have a look at adding that in. So let's double left mouse click grape leaf. So again, let's just grab that with the transform handle. Let's drag it over to where we roughly want it. So about there. I'm just going to size that down so it doesn't overbear the grapes on either side of it. So I think around that size is not too bad. Yeah, we'll go for that size. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to tilt this a little bit. So we'll go to the properties here again, tilt, set. So we'll go from here to here.
just going to have a very, very slight tilt to this one, I think, just to bring it through a little bit. Now we're going to have the same problem we had with wine glasses, which is that we need a little bit of base height. So let's add that in. So again, click on that. Let's drag that up just a little bit to bring that through. And you can see it taking shape now. That looks pretty good around about there. Now you probably have some areas that you can see here where the green is shining through, but I'm actually pretty happy with how it is, because it's not overbearing the design, and it's not going too far out compared to our wine bottle there or our wine glasses. I will size it down just a little bit though, so you can see more of the grapes in the background there. So let's grab our handle here and let's size that down just a little bit so we can get more of those grapes prominent. Actually, maybe about there actually. Okay, yeah, so I'm pretty happy with how that looks so far, and I can move this across if I want to, and I can actually move these grapes out if I want to as well, and size these up to make these more prominent as well, if that helps. So I can pop these around there, and I can always just make these a little bit bigger if I want to, and I think that's looking pretty good. So I now want to mirror these to the other side. So how do I do that? Go to our components tree here, so we can select our leaf, hold shift and select our grapes, go over to the design tab, we'll go over to mirror selected objects, just go to the top on that one so we can zoom in and have a look at it straight down, and we'll do the same thing again, flip horizontal, and then this will pop it over to the other side. And so far so good. All we need to do now is add in some text. So let's come to the top left here, click on the text tool here. We're going to choose text, and we're going to go for vintages in capitals. The font we've gone for is Lucida Bright, and we're going to go for a bold text here, and we're just going to bring that in, hit close, going to bring that down here, snap it to the middle there, and we're just going to size it up. So we'll just zoom in and we'll size this up a little bit, hold shift, grab the transform handle, and we want it to be not so big that the V and the S interact with the grape leaves over here, because we're going to actually size those individually in a moment, because we're going to right mouse click this text now, and we're going to convert it to vectors. So they're going to be their own separate vectors. So we're going to take the V and we're going to move it to the left just a little bit using our arrow keys, and we're going to size that up just a bit bigger, and we'll do the same for the S. We'll shift that over to the right a little bit, make that just a little bit bigger, and I think that looks pretty good, and it looks like our original worksheet here as well. So now we can get this ready for toolpathing. And with that, that brings us to the end of our tutorial, but you can see just how quickly, how easily in the 3D view you can manipulate and adjust your components. You can bring them in, you can mirror them, and how quickly you can build up a design and make yourself a very interesting looking sign here. So I hope you use this to your advantage with your projects, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.